Today's guest is Angela Wetzel, who is a trauma-informed relationship coach specializing in helping high achievers and purpose-driven people heal their unresolved blocks to love and attachment styles so they can experience deep relationship satisfaction. Angela, thank you very much for being on. How are you doing today?
My pleasure. Thanks. Yeah, I'm actually having a pretty fantastic, interesting, busy day. So I'm excited to dive in with you here, and I really appreciate your invitation.
Awesome. Well, this will either make it really good or it'll make it really bad, and you'll be the judge of where that's going to go. So we'll find out.
Well,
Um, So yeah, I mean, I'd love for you to just kind of give us a breakdown of kind of how you got to doing what you're doing and what you're all about before we dive into all of the coaching work.
wow. There will be no time for coaching if I tell my whole story because it's very long. But to break it down, basically acting and writing my whole life, just wanted to be on SNL. I loved Carol Burnett. That was kind of my dream. And went on this acting path, told my dad about my dreams. He was like, get a real job. So I was like, why not international business? I ended up joining the military when I was 17. I left for boot camp when I was 18. I became a Korean linguist in the US Army. Ended up becoming a non-commissioned officer. So then I did some of that time over in South Korea, came back to the NSA, and then ended up being a government contractor at the Office of Naval Intelligence. And then my whole life started falling apart, including my marriage, which I'd gotten married straight out of leaving the Defense Language Institute. Started on my kind of like spiritual journey of being like, whoa, what the hell was that with my relationship? So that was kind of my first really big initiation of how did I attract that? What was that? What was all of that? Started to learn more through subsequent relationships, got Lyme disease, almost felt like I was going to die. So I moved to New York, got into NYU, got my BFA through that program. It really illuminated and highlighted so much unresolved trauma and things that are at the root of it. That I had a retinal detachment because I wasn't really feeling my feelings. And that catapulted me further into the personal development and spiritual and relational space. And I ended up becoming a certified coach and diving into any and everything. And then I got to a point through one of my relationships where even though I was deeply in love, I chose to walk away and end that because I felt the relationship wasn't going to serve me. And it kind of cemented this place in me of knowing that I could choose myself and start to teach and lead others in being able to choose themselves, their own path and purpose, and how ultimately our relationships can serve as beautiful relationships where we can awaken more to our own power and truth, and how we can also use our relationships to illuminate our blind spots in so many different areas. And I do all this through a number of different modalities, including parts work. I use attachment theory and a lot of different things, including like conscious reparenting. So I use a lot of different modalities. I combine them together. I do one-on-one coaching. I also do groups, masterminds, digital courses, and soon to launch live events again.
Love it. Well, I mean, as far as like compressing so much, time into like a very succinct description, I think you did a fabulous job. So
Thank you.
thank you for that. Um, okay, so here's the thing. I think because we already had some conversations prior to going live, and because your level of self-awareness is so high, like even the application stuff you submitted was kind of like it goes right to the heart of the issue. I figure
Yeah.
if you're cool with it, like let's just dive right into that and see
Let's
where
go, baby.
takes us. Okay, perfect. So when I'd asked you initially through the application process of like, okay, well, what is it that you're like struggling with as far as like head trash, etc. So one of the things you wrote on there is, okay, I'm just reading your words now.
Yeah,
So
go
I'll
ahead.
never be able to create like what I want. I can't have what I want. I'm going to be stuck here forever. And these were things that obviously can make me feel horrible. And in the end, I end up procrastinating. This creates a time pressure, I'm assuming due to a lot of avoidance. And then I like work when I have to make up for those differences. And overall, this constricts my ability to actually be creative, to be in flow, to be able to have that stability that I'm looking for. Okay. In addition to that, I know you just told me before we started recording, you'd done all this work to like create this funnel, and I didn't really feel safe launching it. So cumulatively, when I'm reflecting that back to you as far as like, okay, your self-awareness around what you're struggling with in your patterns, does that sum up where you are? And we can kind of use that as a starting point.
Yeah, it's funny because I end up like working on these very same things with my clients, and it's funny because I can see like the thought forms, and I know it's not true on some level, but it still creates that like emotional piece. And I think at the heart of it, emotionally, it feels like overwhelm, and it can feel like terror, and I think it feels like I'm some of the fear is of being like inundated and overwhelmed, and like then everything's gonna fall apart, and there's just something in there. It's like I've been told I have this like fear of success, but
Hmm.
I've always been like, well, isn't it ultimately that if I get success, then I'm going to fail, like I won't be able to sustain it or something like that.
Okay. So that's what I was going to ask you, which is because you were saying, okay, so I feel this stare, I feel overwhelmed, the fear it's all going to fall apart. So define it. What is the it that your
It
system
is
shuts
like
down from?
so yeah, I've been I've been like deep diving into this, and part of what I've seen is it's not so much that I don't trust life or even maybe like source or God or whatever people would say, but it's like there is a sense of a part of me that feels such deep inadequacy where it's like I'm feel like I'm gonna miss like the messages, or I'm gonna miss these like intuitive hits, or I won't do this the right thing in time. So it's like it feels like an issue of trust with myself. Like, can I trust myself to show up in this way? And the it falling apart is like my business, probably my like reputation, because integrity is such a hugely important thing to me. So it's kind of like, can I sustain these promises that I make to people? Because that's really important to me. Or am I gonna fail and then every like my business falls apart? Then so like when I have my clients like follow their fears down, like I would follow that fear down. It would be basically like no one loves me and I'm alone and like in the gutter, like sifting through rainwater, like looking for food and change and stuff.
Okay. So I will reiterate what I said at the beginning. Obviously, you're very self-aware and you have you know like you've mapped out exactly what is there. Like you're aware of the thoughts. You can see a lot of them are not true, but they feel so overwhelmingly stuck to me, right? Rooted in shame. So if you are aware of all of this, what do you think? Well, okay, let's not even backtrack. So how long has this been going on?
Like, how long have I been aware of this?
Correct.
Or,
Correct. Because like you've clearly spent a lot of time thinking
yeah,
about and being introspective about the dynamic.
yes. Probably the awareness of these kinds of patterns, probably close to 10 years of like the introduction of understanding some of those patterns, and also knowing where they come from too, like seeing some of the
And is
initial.
that broadly or specific to your business?
It would be specific to my nervous system and
Mhm.
specific to also how it shows up in my business and in life.
Okay, perfect. So, and just more for my own clarity. So, 10 years of like deeply looking at the landscape of my history, looking at the landscape of my thoughts, of my feelings. So, you've been running your business for 10 years, and this has been going on for 10 years, and I've been trying to navigate around.
I started coaching in 2016.
Hmm.
And obviously, I've made a lot of progress. Like, even though I've had awareness of that, I've been able to actually continue to up level to a point where I think one of your requirements was like you want people to have an established business. So I'm a six-figure coach. I've gotten to this point, and now it's like I'm right at this threshold. And it's like this thing that it's like I'm on the upward spiral, and now it's like I feel like I've hit the ceiling so far, or the glass, it's like a
Yeah.
glass ceiling, but it's like I view it as this Gordian knot of all of these different shadows and different like traumas that somehow I've like if you're playing a video game, it's like you get to the like one of the big bosses and you've been able to like get through all these other bosses, but like this is a big one and you're like, fuck, like I can cuss here, right?
Okay. Yeah,
Like
yeah, absolutely.
like
So,
how do I like now whatever's happening, like usually I'm not backing down or I'm not halting my process of scaling, like I'm able to move forward. But whatever it's been, it's just like this kind of like backing off of it. And then it's like even having all of that understanding and doing all this work around it, yeah, there's been a challenge specifically with scaling above my first six figures. Yes.
okay. So if we zoom into that piece, because that seems to me like the piece that's most relevant to you right now. Like I have these like
Yeah.
10 years of experiences where I've dove into all this work as far as like relationship, my life, how I
Yeah,
show
because
up.
I'm doing all these things like simultaneously, like lots simultaneously, lots of growth.
Yeah, correct. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So if you're zooming into your business specifically, right, there's a few things you mentioned, right? You mentioned I don't like the piece about the funnel, like I don't feel safe launching after having done all this work. There's this like dichotomy between, well, I feel like it's not stopping me to like do the work, but yet I'm at this like culmination Gordian knot of like I can't scale because all these things are coming together. So if you dive into and zoom into just the business piece, okay,
Mhm.
what do you think is the biggest challenge that you're experiencing right now?
The biggest challenge, can you ask me that in a different way? Do you mean
Sure.
like my point of greatest suffering?
Sure. So if that's what popped for you, let's go with that.
Um, I do think I'm trying to, okay, I don't know if I can answer this exactly. But would it be, maybe I can tell you different pieces of like what I see
Hmm.
maybe around this. And it's funny because I actually feel like I'm starting to dissociate. So just
Okay. So that's also an important note, right?
right. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So if we
So I can
retract
actually
that,
feel already in my body
yeah,
that my head, I'm starting to feel a little swimmy. I'm feeling a little confused.
yeah.
And I can feel my heartbeat has already picked up. So
Okay.
clearly, like talking about this, there's like major shit here.
Absolutely. So, okay. Take a moment and just like be with that. Okay. Because as you know, that's an important indicator that we want to send curiosity and compassion to.
Mhm.
Okay. So let me know if you're good for me
Yeah,
to.
it's so interesting because I'm feeling so much pressure like in the back of my head. So I'm just gonna do some somatic stuff to like help me stay in my body through
Okay.
this.
Sure. Are you okay if I make some reflections back while you
Yes,
do that? Okay.
yes,
So it's interesting that when you globally speak about these things,
yes,
no issues, beautifully articulated, very full of insights, right? Deep awareness around all of the things.
yes.
Okay. As soon as I prompt you to zoom into business specifically, and then you kind of like retract back, well, I don't understand the question. Well, I kind of do. And we're going back and forth. And it's kind of
Right.
like when I hold up the mirror to like, no, 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 I want you to just stay here with the business. The first
Yeah,
place your nervous system goes to is, okay, let me disassociate.
let's go.
Okay.
Out.
So how much blocks do you think you have around? It's like you have a lot of awareness, but
Mhm.
how much of that awareness is actually a blind spot to what is actually holding you back from business?
Well, the intellect can definitely be a shadow because like awareness is only one part of the puzzle,
Hmm.
right? Because then there's the application of it's like I know connecting our intellect with our emotional body is a huge part of it. And clearly, at this point, when we zoom into the emotional aspect or like we get closer to the core, it's like that fight or flight response takes over.
Mhm.
And then it's, well, not take over, but yes, it's very present. And then my coping strategies come up and I'm attempting to eject from my body.
Correct. Right. So the thought of even being in a space where somebody is nudging you to really look deeply at this expression of you, which is your business, which I know is a very personal business given what you do,
Yeah.
complete and utter shutdown. So
Well, not complete and
before,
utter shutdown because we're
okay,
still
sorry.
having
I mean, for the sake of like,
conversations.
it,
But yes,
like if you're trying to do
in
this
terms of
yourself,
being able to move forward, yes,
correct, right?
not
Like,
super great at this.
correct. Yeah, I mean, listen, obviously, like you're still here, you're present, like that. That's all. I just mean in terms of like when I contrast how you were able to speak about everything
Yes.
prior
Okay.
to
Yes,
like
that's
that,
fair.
like it's a
I would agree
stark,
with that.
stark contrast. So
Yeah.
that's all I meant by that.
Mhm.
So when you're looking at that piece before healing that, reconciling that, eliminating those patterns is on the table, you got to look at like, are you actually ready to unpack what's here and unlock the ceiling in your business?
I think so. I,
Okay.
well, first and foremost, I know, I think the most important factor is willingness. However, I understand awareness is also a component, and then capacity is another one. So, do I have
Mhm.
like the full capacity? I'm not 100% sure, but do I have the willingness? Absolutely.
Okay. So the question was, are you ready to actually face these things? And right, where your brain went to was basically a great definition of the difference between willingness and capacity, which is awesome that you know that, and
Yes.
also skirting the question completely.
Yes.
Yes.
You're
Okay.
good. You're good.
Not my
Good
first
catch.
rodeo. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So what comes up for you with that reflection?
That I'm doing what I would call tap dancing.
Hmm. So
But then
let's
I
get
did
more
answer,
specific.
so I said yes. Yes,
Okay.
I am willing.
Okay. Willing to what?
Willing to go in and get clarity on what this pattern is.
Okay. Why?
Because I think the most important thing for me is I don't want to let this aspect of me hold me back from being able to serve people in the way that I desire to.
Hmm.
And and I know that in order to do that, this is a big piece that is not allowing me to be in my full expression and to show up in the ways that I need to.
Okay. So are you okay if we dive more specifically into that?
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason why I'm asking for specificity here is because your system freaked out when I basically held the mirror to specificity,
Yeah.
right? Here, when we talk generally, all good. Why? Because general is safe,
Hmm.
right? But as soon as we dove into what are the specifics, like the accountability mirror started to shine a little bit deeper and a little bit harder,
Hmm.
we had that shut down. Okay. So that's the only reason why I want to go deeper into, okay. So are you okay with that piece? All right.
Yes.
So first one. So when I ask you, okay, like, are you ready and actually willing to like make these changes? Yes, I am. Okay,
Yes.
cool. Why? Well, I want to get clarity. Okay. So let's dive a bit deeper into that because if I look at your answers, they're answers that sound correct, they sound like they're the right ones, and they're the equivalent of trying. Like if I try to pick up, you know, this pen that's on my desk, if I fail and try, I'm still trying. And if I succeed in a try, I'm still trying, which is the games that our psyche plays on us to be like, oh, yeah, yeah, we're moving forward because we're trying,
Yeah.
right? And then answers like, I would love to get clarity on this. This is important because this is what's going to like stopping me from like expressing like that's all
Yeah.
good and great. Is it actually aligned with a deep desire to want to change?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So why?
Why? I would like to evolve. Um, why? Deep desire to change. I don't even know if I know how to answer this question.
Okay. And that's fine. If you don't know, I appreciate the honesty. Like this is what the exploration is about.
Like
So,
it feels like um, that there would be no answer that's actually sufficient.
okay. So let me reflect that back to you. There is no answer that is sufficient as to why I would want to eliminate the parts of me that freak out when I speak about
Right.
overcoming my business.
May I? This feels a little maybe like I can feel that the certain words that you've chosen that I
Mhm.
don't love.
Sure. By all means, yeah, yeah. Call my BS or reflect back to me what you do.
Well, you use the word eliminate this part.
Hmm.
So I would prefer to say help, assist, integrate, help to evolve.
Yeah. So I actually use parts work in my own coaching as well. So I'm
Right,
fully aware
right.
to
So,
not
but
eliminate the
the
part. I meant more the pattern, right? So eliminate the pattern
sure,
of
yeah,
correct.
eliminate, sure, fine. Eliminate the pattern. Freak out feels a little bit judgmental of an emotional state that is arising. So it feels to me, to my parts,
Hmm.
this emotional stuff, it would feel like honoring of to say that there's, there's fear here or there's something, coming up. I just feel like maybe there's a better way to say that that feels more, a little bit
Okay.
more sensitive.
I'm all for the word choice and the
Okay.
change. So that it totally whatever resonates with you is ultimately the words that I want to use. And sometimes, right, I will actually so one of the principles I always use when I do coach, right? Like you can't be triggered if you're not loaded. So part of my job is to explore
That's
where you
good.
actually loaded, right?
Yeah.
So if anything I say to you is triggered, and I really appreciate you being like, hey, by the way, XYZ, cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So why do you think those pieces were actually triggering for
Um, in my early childhood, I was a very highly emotional child and I was punished, shamed, rejected, abandoned for having lots of feelings.
you? Got it. Okay. So,
I'm very sensitive to languaging around when people are like, so and so's crazy or this or that, because that can be unintentional emotional gaslighting. And it can be
absolutely.
very damaging to some of the emotions that are present. Now, I understand taking full responsibility for behaviors in conjunction with those emotions, but because of some of that wounding, I have great sensitivity myself for, yeah, just words can be, yeah, like it can feel like I'm not fully being seen or maybe honored in some ways or cherished in the vulnerability that's here.
Got it. So thank you for sharing that because it is an important piece of the overall puzzle. My intention was at no point to
Yeah,
elicit like I'm trying to discount your experience. Like that
yeah,
experience of I'm freaked out and like this is triggering, like that is a very real experience. And I understand the history with from which it's coming
right.
from. Okay.
Thanks.
So
Yeah,
there's not
I'm
of
all
this.
good. I'm all good on that. We're on the same page. I
Okay.
appreciate like I
Perfect.
see you and I can feel that from you. But I could tell my parts were like, hey, we don't love this kind
Got
of
it.
yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
Perfect. So feel free to like interject in that way at any point because I will sometimes get too excited and it's not from a place of like I want to judge you into anything.
Yeah, you're just
It's just
like, just
from
let me get right on it.
yeah, yeah. And it's like I know we're on a time crunch too, so I'm trying to get to like and I know it's like the exact opposite of what we would do in like a coaching session because it's kind of a unique setup. So
Right,
if
yeah.
something's miscommunicated, that's on me. That's not on you, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay.
Okay,
So
all good, all good.
beautiful. Okay. So if we zoom out a little bit, okay, what is it that you essentially want? Right? Like what is your life look like when you have resolved the inner conflict that's basically creating this business ceiling?
It looks like me being able to like show up and offer my programs and actually like create like launch my funnel. But also it means that I'm serving people on a larger level, so running events and having like programs where I'm able to serve more people at once, which I know is a big edge for me. But it also means like, more reciprocity and flow in terms of income too, so that like I have more consistency because it's been like good and then it's like these extremes of really good, like whoa, just what do they, there's like a term for it, but
Yeah, feast and famine revenue.
yeah, like kind of feast and famine things where
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm seeing it and I know that there's always an energetic and emotional basis to those things as well.
To
So
the
it would
feast and
be,
famine portion of
yes,
your
yeah.
okay, got it.
And also like, sure, based in attachment too, but I mean, so I understand that, but it would be great to be more integrated with these different parts and to feel safe in
Okay. So if you continue that, to feel safe to do what?
be visible.
Be visible. Okay. So let's define that further if you're okay with it. What does it mean to be visible? Because that's related to, but different than feast and famine cycles. It's related to solving or launching your funnel. So like, what do you actually mean when you say be visible?
Be visible. That means being seen by lots more people.
Okay. And what what is the internal trigger for, okay, now a lot of people are seeing me.
It feels unpredictable.
Okay. Right. So I can't control, like if it's a one-on-one, if it's a small setting, if I know who's in the room, it's a lot easier to gauge who's safe, who isn't, and then I can ensure that how I present keeps me safe. But if I just go out and become a light, then that's also going to trigger a lot of other people are going to send it my way. And I can't control the response. Yeah. Okay. So what's coming up for you as I reflect that?
Yeah, there's a lot of emotion, like, and I can tell my throat's closing too, but yeah, it's just feeling more deeply into that fear of it feeling deeply unsafe to be seen
Hmm.
by and it's almost like, yes, you're right. One-on-one clients having smaller groups, it feels more manageable, but on a wider scale to be that wide open, it feels really, really vulnerable and really, really scary.
So I appreciate you sharing like the intellectual answer of that. What's the actual emotion that's coming up that's
Yeah,
behind the tears?
I appreciate the redirection. Well, I think I feel a lot of acknowledgement and kind of like validation almost, like, yeah, that's what it is. Like, I don't feel safe, but the emotion is like, it feels like sadness. It feels, I feel the fear, but I also feel sadness, but it also feels like relief to talk about it.
Hmm. It's always going to be like if a lot of your previous wounding has been about never being seen and everything being pushed back and your experience never being validated, it's always going to be relieving to be seen. 110%. That's going to be like the, for lack of a better term, like the sugar high that your parts want because it's like this is what I've
Yeah.
longed for so long. Okay.
It feels good to be emotionally seen in a safe environment and by more and more people. It does feel good.
Yeah.
The, yeah, and I guess it's a little bit of relief. Yeah, that relief to be seen. The other part is like, yeah, so much fear about being seen because the other component was being seen was actually really, really unsafe.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's,
And it's always going to be that dichotomy of various different parts, you know, vying for whatever they think is safest. So, A, I just want to acknowledge you for even coming into a space like this because it's the exact antithesis of, safety that your parts are looking for. So the fact that you're stepping into being more visible in a vulnerable way is obviously a big step. Two, reinforced a bit about relief, right? It's like we said, it's a sugar high that your parts want because they've wanted it for so long. And it's a beautiful part of the healing process, 110%. And the tricky part with relief is that it oftentimes feels like progress. I feel better. I can breathe. We are now okay. And in the short term, that is actually true, right?
you said it is true in the short term,
Correct. In the short term, like it is better.
right?
Of
A
course,
little
of
bit
course,
of
you want to
relief.
feel
Yeah.
better. Yes, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with feeling better. We all want that. That's the thing to celebrate.
Right. But it's the release of that tension, and then we're like, oh, okay,
Correct.
like some of the tension's gone, but it doesn't actually mean that.
Correct. It's like if we're gonna look at this in parts or parlance, right? We've gotten the relief because you saw the exile, but it's still burdened with the thing that
Right.
has created
Yeah.
the business problems to begin with. So it's like same, but different, right? It'll show up on the next launch, it'll show up on the thing, it'll show up when
Yeah.
I
It'll
invest in
keep
more
showing up.
things and I don't launch, it'll show up when I self-sabotage. You know what I mean? Like it's the burden carries itself and just looks like a different problem.
Yeah.
And if I keep searching for relief, then I never solve it, right? Which is kind of what the original reason why I asked you to zoom in into like, okay, what are the specifics? What is it you actually want? Is to basically prompt that readiness and see like, okay, do your parts and you want to just keep recycling the same thing to look different every time, or are they actually ready to reconcile, to unburden, and to move forward?
Got it.
So, what lands like if that was a question, what would land for you?
The if that was a question, that was all you said, but it was a really good. I liked what you said. I would just say yes
Okay, perfect. To which parts?
to you saying, like, do those are those parts ready to unburden and like shift that pattern? Because, like you said, yeah, it will always be there. It'll come around again, or it'll shape shift and show up in a different area. So yes, I
Perfect.
would, yeah.
And what's on the other side for you personally doing that? And what's on the other side for you business wise to do that?
Personally, well, I mean, I know wherever you go, there you are. So I even feel like relationally, there's just a lot of things there because in being seen and showing up in that way, like traveling, which I'm already doing, yes, but I don't maybe necessarily fully know how it would look different, but I know that being unburdened, it's like all that energy gets to be used in more like creative, like generative ways instead of like it's exhausting. Like it's exhausting to live in protection and to have these parts, like being hyper vigilant. So it would probably translate into more energy, better relationships, more fun, feeling lighter, like so many different things. And then professionally, being, like I said, like being able to serve more people in that way, making more meaningful connections, even being able to serve my clients on an even deeper level because I've been able to go in and clear this because I feel like where we have those blind spots, we're still limited and we can't really help others as deeply or to that extent that we haven't really healed. We can't hold space for that. So as I continue to evolve, like a lot of the people that I coach are leaders and doctors and people that have large communities that don't always have the same visibility problems, which, you know, but maybe someday people will come to me for visibility problems because I'll figure that shit out. And potentially with just more consistent visibility on a larger scale, then that will also change some of the like the flow, obviously, of money in, money out, um, things like that. And then not having certain coping strategies, which look all kinds of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that goes back to the exhausting hypervigilant piece, right? So yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Okay. So I mean, I want to be conscious of time because I wish I could help you reconcile all of your parts in one call, but
That'd be
unfortunately,
fantastic.
that would be fantastic. I agree. Unfortunately, as
Right.
you know, it doesn't really work that way.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Do know.
as far as just like mapping out, okay, so how are these parts, how are these patterns creating a business ceiling for me right now? Like, does this feel complete for you, or is there still something left outstanding?
Um, can you ask that question another way?
Okay. So throughout this conversation, like we've looked at different things, and my intention for it was to help you get a clear understanding of like, okay, well,
Hmm.
where is the major blind spot, right? From my vantage point, it's I'm very well aware of all of the moving pieces. When I start to zoom into what this actually means in terms of my business expansion,
Yeah.
all roads essentially lead to some version. I'm going to have to be more visible. More success means I'm going to have to be more visible. More money means I'm going to have to be more visible. Bigger programs, more people, bigger
Hmm.
exposure, like all of it kind of is some version of visibility. So to me, the business ceiling, the feast and famine, all of those pieces at the end of the day circle back to working through reconciling and healing the
Hmm.
parts of you that are so freak. Like when you say you have a fear of success because you have a fear of visibility, right? So
Right.
to me, that's like the map of what is actually holding you back.
Hmm.
And then in conjunction to that, to what degree am I actually ready to face this now? Because if I face it, it means taking a very real step up into the world,
Yeah.
right? That's kind of the mapping that I see for you, given everything.
Yeah.
So is there something that's still left standing for you? Obviously, we can go deeper into this, but as far as just mapping it out, seeing the lay of the land, does that feel complete for you? Is there still something left outstanding?
It feels like, yes, it largely all points to some form of visibility. And then, I mean, I know there's other aspects to it too, like just some form of like perfectionism, like not wanting to make mistakes. Also, just like,
Right. Because all of those, if I'm visible in my mistakes, that's also a nightmare.
right, some aspects of like self-obsession, which is like, how will I look or how will people see me or what if I show up and, like I ugly cry, which, I don't really believe. I know people say ugly cry, sure, sometimes, but um,
It's okay. It
crying
was a
is
beautiful
painful.
expression of what was real. So don't worry about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm totally there with you. I was meaning like the phrase ugly
Yeah.
cry is funny, but it's also can bring about like shame for people when they're like just having a genuine expression and then it's like the word ugly goes with cry and then again, it's like shame around the expression of emotions.
Yeah,
You know?
100%. It doesn't help. The term doesn't help the
No.
overall
And
experience. Yeah.
it's kind of funny too, but yeah.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. So, and again, this is just again for time because some of you are like real time. I got to get to another call as well. Um, I know we can dive into and actually explore the parts, etc. And like if this was a coaching session, it's exactly what I would do. But as far as helping you map out, what the biggest roadblock or like linchpin kind of
Mhm.
challenge is this feel complete for you?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So if you would be okay to give us a close with the fullest visibility of like who's the best person to find me, where can they find me? Floor is yours for that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I also have a podcast called the So Emotional Podcast, and that is me and my podcast partner, Nick Carl. He's a somatic coach, so we talk about attachment, emotions, like all the things, like through a parts work lens, trauma informed lens, and it's pretty irreverent. So we try to keep it as real and open and funny and messy as possible while like talking about the some of the deeper things that go on when you start to learn like, oh, I wasn't feeling. Oh, I maybe I'm not really feeling kind of thing. So we have that. That's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, and is that what it's called? SoundCloud? Yeah. And YouTube.
Mhm.
And then you can find me at Epic Initiator on Instagram. So I have a lot of content about attachment relationships. If in my stories, it's usually just funny stuff like that I find and I post. I also do some stuff on attachment in there, interacting with different accounts and people. Sometimes like gene keys and human design for people that are into that. I have a little bit of that in there, and I love making memes. And I make charts and diagrams, so you have to like look. I just have a lot of content there, and then I write for Elephant Journal as well. Sometimes I haven't done that in a while, but I have a lot of articles on there. I have a blog on my website as well, which is www.epicinitiator.com. So I have a lot of stuff out there, which has been a journey, and I'm just still on that journey. Yeah.
As we all are. So yes,
Yeah.
I acknowledge you for, especially with like visibility issues. This is obviously the last thing you want to do for visibility when it's like fully vulnerable. So I acknowledge you for doing that, for stepping up in that way, for allowing yourself to be seen in that way.
Mhm.
So thank you for that. And yeah, for everybody else listening, we'll see you on the next one.